Welcome to the Arena Decklist Podcast. I'm Jerry Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb, and we have a lot to check in on, and then we have some standard to talk about. First things first, Brian.
Hi, Gerald.
Hi, Brian. We have a Patreon, Brian.
Do we?
Yeah, that you were supposed to say a little bit more there, other
sorry.
than just pure surprise.
Sorry,
but I am probably going to talk about this maybe every episode, maybe every other episode, just as much as I remember it, but very, very lightly. Just if y'all want to support us, we do have a Patreon. That is a good way to go about things. We really appreciate it because it means that we get to continue doing this, which we do enjoy doing. So it would be nice to be able to keep doing that. And for the folks who are current patrons or even former patrons, anyone who has graced us with their presence in the Discord and everything, we appreciate y'all a lot.
Yeah. Awesome people who have let us do this for how many years have we been doing this now? I know you've got some time. You've got like a year ahead of me arriving, but just you and I have a really long run at this point. It's got to be 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah. Were you on for Nashville? No, because Majors was still playing then.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
So it was like 2017 or 2018 for you.
I think it's 2017 because I wasn't living in Seattle yet, and I think I moved to Seattle in 2018.
Yeah. So it is definitely over 4 years, probably 5 years. It's been a minute, dude. We've been doing it for a while.
Wild. And shout outs to everyone who has supported us through all that and has let us do this all that time. It's kind of incredible if you think about it.
I definitely agree. And I would like to keep doing it. So just plugging that real quick. Other thing, it is getting very, very close to October 1st, October 2nd, which means the Legacy Pit event in Richmond. Again, October 1st, October 2nd. If you're in the area or if you just want to watch some coverage, there's going to be that on Twitch. I know, weird Magic tournament coverage.
Awesome.
Being streamed. Very, very strange times we live in, but that event is going to be cool. Also, I know that the Sunday event is now a destination event, so it is an RCQ, is also a cash event, but I don't actually know about the main event. I probably should have checked on that, but regardless, Legacy main event, a bunch of side events for a bunch of different formats, including Modern 5K on Sunday, which is also an RCQ. It is going to be fun, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be doing some deck doctory type stuff on Saturday. Sunday is kind of undecided yet. Maybe I'll actually play now that it's an RCQ. I don't know. We'll see.
That would be cool. Turns out I'm not going to be able to make it. I know I talked about it last week. Unfortunately, have other pressing matters I have to attend to. But it's good to know there's coverage and I can check in and see what's going on. And I hope to see you playing in the event. I think that would be cool.
We'll see. I don't know. I can stomach playing the local stores at this point, or at least like hanging out in the local stores, like 40 player events. But yeah, cramped convention center. I mean, we'll see how cramped it is, right? Like if it's like the 2002, like you're basically stacking matches and players on top of each other, I'm not going to do that. But I believe that we'll have plenty of space and maybe it will be comfy enough for me to play. We'll see.
Yeah. Also, you might be worn down. I mean, you got a big tournament you're attending this weekend as well. So, all that tournament play might just grind you to dust.
Well, I was going to talk about that in the sense of you are too big time to come visit me, but
correct,
you
yes.
managed to trick me to visiting you in Charlotte for a Flesh and Blood tournament, which I don't even play.
Yep.
So I'm going to go down for a couple days for the times. I realized that my friend Austin Yost is going, so it'll be nice to see him because I haven't seen him in a couple years. So other than that, I don't even know who I'm going to know that's there besides you, but you're going to be like behind the booth and everything. Your brother's playing, right?
Yep, he's playing, but he probably won't play along knowing him. So you can always hang out with him.
I don't know, man. We went to SCG Con. He was going deeper
he did crush
than the rest of us.
Yeah, he crushed at basically every event at SCG Con, right? Finished second in a PTQ and did well in all the Flesh and Blood tournaments he played. So maybe he's going to crush this event as well. We'll see. I think there's going to be more people there, than you expect. Now, are there going to be people you're excited to see? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the difference.
I do think there will be people there. And even in a dealer capacity and just people I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how many folks you come in contact with.
Is it just a lot of the Magic vendors have picked up Fab?
I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, definitely some have, and then there's some like fab only vendors doing their thing. So it's been interesting to see that evolve, and some are diving in harder than others, but certainly I think a lot of the faces are the same. It's kind of like a very unique skill set, right? And if you have it for one game, you probably have it for multiple games if you're willing to do the work. So,
Dude, let me tell you, I just Googled Flesh and Blood Nationals, right?
yep,
And it takes, because I was curious about the vendors and who
yep,
I would know because I'm friends with a lot of the vendors. I do like the vendors. And then it was also like, oh, well, maybe they'll also be buying Magic cards and I can bring some cards to sell.
yeah, I
But
think you might be okay with that.
it takes me to a website that is fabnationals.us. And it's
Mm.
just front page, like all the info. This is awesome.
Look, I'm not going to say that Flesh and Blood has solved the internet thing. Like, there's definitely still aspects of our tournament locator, and some things are a little bit hard to find on the website. But if you are coming from a Magic space, you are going to be delighted with the ease of finding things on the website. It's just like night and day.
How often are we like, when does this arena PTQ start? And then you have to click around through 10 pages.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be that hard,
Nope.
but it is. Anyway, the vendors are two I've never heard of, and then Strike Zone, who is whatever. So rats, man, you got my hopes up there, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's possible that, like, even though you've never heard of those vendors, there may be overlap. Like, I've seen a lot of familiar faces, and the vendors better than I do, so you'll be better equipped to judge that. But
We'll see. We'll see.
mhm.
Anyway, if y'all want information about Flesh and Blood US Nationals, fabnationals.us, it's pretty hard to forget.
It's good URLing. Stuff's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, just crushing it. Okay. What else, man? I don't know. I'm having like a good brain chemical day,
Well, that's
you
good.
know?
Happy to hear that.
Yeah. Went to visit Josh Cho last weekend, watch him go 1-2 in an arena PTQ.
What a loser.
What was your record, Brian?
2-2.
Oh, okay.
So an entire match better than Josh Joe.
Was your deck completely unplayable? Because his
No,
was.
no, my play was poor. My play was poor. My draws were poor. My deck was fine. I said it was a 5-win deck. I didn't get there. My heart wasn't in it. I think it was so gorgeous out on Saturday, and then like I queue up and I'm kind of into it. Like I'm excited. I like playing Magic for stakes. Like that doesn't come up all that often for me, and it's fun when it does. So I'm pretty into it. And I log in and I open my deck and I build, and it's pretty good. And I'm like, okay, like I said, probably about 5 wins, but I think I need to get a little lucky if we're actually going to make day two. So I win my first game, and I'm like, nice, off to the races, 1 win. And then we go to sideboarding, and I was like, what? Sideboarding?
Ah,
Yeah, I
ah.
didn't know. I didn't know we were playing best 2 out of 3. So, had to change my deck a little bit between rounds for sure. And also very quickly lost interest because I'm like, this is going to take all day. This is a full day commitment now.
Listen, man, you know that like the 5 round PTQs or whatever, those are best of 3. Otherwise, it has like 7 to 10 rounds or something.
But this had 7. You had to get 7 wins, right?
No, I think it was 5. Maybe that was just the
I don't think that's right. I think you had to get 7 wins in this day one. And at that point, I was like, well, this is 8 hours probably. And I did the thing where I knew I had to get up and do the registration. So I did that. I passed that test. And then I was like, well, I'll wait a little bit. I got plenty of time.
Yeah.
And I waited a couple hours. And then when I saw best 2 out of 3, I'm like, I don't even know if I can actually finish this anymore. Like I'm pushing it.
Yeah, man, you got to figure out like what tournament you're actually playing in. I mean,
I know.
I've definitely done that before too, where it's like, oh yeah, it feels like we can lounge around, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this closes at 7 or whatever, and it's 5. Like, I gotta hurry up with these last 2 matches. It's like the best of 3 ones definitely do not mess around. You don't have a lot of time for them.
No, you don't. I'm not blaming anyone but myself. I mean, I guess if there was a website that was like arenatournament.us, I would have been better informed.
Yes.
But in this case, I didn't really make a huge effort to seek out the information. I'm sure I could have found it if I wanted to.
Yeah. I don't know. That's too bad, I guess. But I think what I maybe would have done in your situation is like try and find a spot on your porch or like, whatever chair situation you had going on when you were sending me the cat pictures. And just like post up there, maybe in the shade, or maybe get like an umbrella or something with a laptop or just play on your phone or whatever. Try and do that so you can have best of both worlds, you know?
Yeah, maybe I should give that a shot. I can play on my phone or iPad if I'm pretty ingrained in the format and like comfortable. Still have to read a lot of cards in this format, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
fair.
second nature. So
I think I'm overestimating the amount of familiarity I have compared to yours at this point.
sure, yeah, that's reasonable.
So yeah, I've just been playing on my phone again, which is fine.
Okay,
Well, yeah, there's that. Got to visit Josh. He busted out, and then we went to this place that we went for one of the RCQs in Northern Virginia. It's called. This is the name is hashtag Gaming Arena,
okay.
and
Is it spelled out hashtag or is it a actual like number sign hashtag?
like in my mind, I read it as the word, but I
Mhm.
actually don't know what they do for social media or their website or
Okay,
whatever. I don't know, but on one hand, I think it's like kind of genius, but also I feel like it's kind of cringe, you know. But the place itself is very cool, and for whatever amount of trying to lean into not necessarily like esports or whatever, but just like I don't know 21st century like gaming culture or whatever. It's like they did it. It's just like all their chairs are basically like the nice Carnox chairs. They have
hmm
nice tables with like the good play mats on them. They have restaurants. I think it's also a bar, but I could be wrong about that. I know that they have food and drinks, right? And yeah, just the area is nice, a lot of space. They have old arcade machines up. They have like feature match tables. They have TVs on the wall for streaming. They stream a lot of Smash because they also host like Smash tournaments there
Oh,
and
cool.
stuff. And they have like all the Ultra Pro wall scrolls for like the mystical archive cards on the wall. So like that looks cool. Like the place is nice.
Look, I think that's what LGSs are supposed to be now. They're supposed to be like destinations. They're supposed to be
Yeah.
nice. The old cramped like 8 sweaty dudes in a basement, that's not going to fly anymore. Nobody's looking for that. Like the audience has grown up, the audience has evolved, I think. And if you're going to pay a premium to, interact with the store, which you often do these days, like that's just how e-commerce works, and the fact that you can always get it cheaper online, you got to provide something. And I think it's just like a nice, comfortable space to play in. That's really the best thing a store can do.
Oh, it's hard though because the margins are so
I
small
know.
already,
No, it's
right?
really tough. It's really tough.
So
I feel
yeah,
for them.
you have to you have to really be confident that your stuff is going to work out. Or
That's why the best thing they can do is actually like a bar. Like your margins
yeah,
on alcohol they're ridiculous. So like some of the best margins you could possibly get.
that creates its own set of problems, of course. But
It
yeah.
does. Yep, it does. It's
But
a
anyway,
tough
play.
world. It's tough to make these businesses these days. The world has changed so much in the
Yeah.
past, just 2 years, honestly.
hmm Yeah, place is cool. Drop by there because Josh was like, maybe I'll just start up a Magic collection. He's been playing a bunch. Rotation just happened. Has been playing standard and everything. So he's like, I'm just gonna buy some Dominaria. So bought some booster boxes. Got like a little 4-row box for him to store his cards in. Opened some packs. I am just like the lifetime undisputed pack opening champion of the universe because my opens were just incredible. And then I had to give Josh all the cards because they were his cards, but
Right,
whatever.
me.
And yeah, opening packs was fun. And we also went to some random, I don't know, like weeb stores, I guess. Like Josh went to some place to, I don't know, there's the reason we went there that day was because he said they had good strawberry lemonade. I don't think that the first time he went to this place was because they had strawberry lemonade.
You're just
But
out there hunting down strawberry lemonade.
yeah, but the weeb store was right next to it. So it's like, all right, we go in there, walk around a little bit. Obviously, like all that stuff is pretty expensive because they're just doing like import stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But got a couple things still. And it's like, that was fun. Went to a Korean bakery and just overall had like a pretty nice day. Came back, hung out with some other friends. That was good. We're recording this at like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday because you're traveling on Thursday. And
Yep.
then I'm going to get like COVID booster tonight. It's a party, dude.
You're gonna get your superpowers. Nice.
Hopefully, man. 3 shots in, I don't have anything yet. So
Yeah, you have run very well. This is now I had my booster last week. I will say, anyone who's like on the fence, don't be. Actually, it's the by far the most mild of the boosters or any of the shots that I've had. Almost
Well,
no side effects for me. So
listen, man, you know that that is not the same for every person. Also depends on what type of vaccine you're
I
getting.
understand, but anecdotally, I've heard a lot of that. So
Okay.
I've heard people reporting very mild side effects from this go around. So and
Well,
regardless, it's still the right thing. Like you should still just get
yes,
the
I
booster.
I agree. Like I don't care if it is worse. I'm still going to get it. You know. I mean, anecdotally, one of my friends got like a blister near his eye, which
Interesting.
I don't know. It's like a weird situation where he would like get a blister occasionally like on his mouth right before he got sick or something, right? And I don't know. It's not like the vaccine gave him eye blisters or whatever, but it was just like this
You
thing
heard
used
it
to
here
happen.
first.
I got the
Vaccines
vaccine,
give eye blisters.
right? And you know, I was trying to like deal with this vaccine, but then I also had this stupid blister on my eye or whatever. You know, it's just like, oh, that does not sound like a fun time. But vaccines have kind of like historically kicked his ass, and his partner is just always fine. She just always shrugs it off. You know, so
Hmm.
yeah, it's just different for everyone.
No, it
But
is. It is. I was very thrilled though, because I mean, also I just had COVID. I missed the Pro Tour in France because I had COVID, so I was only like almost exactly the window for my last positive test until I could get it, and that might have something to do with me having relatively minor symptoms.
maybe, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Too much science, you know. It's just like, what variant of COVID did you have, and is
Yep.
it different
Yep.
than what? Yeah, they're vaccinating you for. Blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah. I'm mostly past trying to understand it and just try and do what is best at this point. So
Yeah, no, get your booster. Knocks you out for maybe a day, and then things are slightly less dangerous, I guess. So
maybe. I don't think we even know that either. But
allegedly,
yeah.
but whatever. You know, like what, like the risk reward
Yeah,
is definitely there.
for
So
sure.
I trust the science mostly. I trust that these people certainly know their stuff better than I do,
Yes.
which is I can't fathom a world in which that is not true because I don't know a lot.
Especially when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What else, man? Visiting you in Charlotte. I don't know what days I'm going to come down, but yeah, just going to pop in for a couple, say hi. It's relatively close to me, so might as well.
Yep, got
Oh,
that going on. I'll be doing the casting, of course, if you want to
dude,
watch on Twitch.
yeah. I feel like I need to bring you stuff. Like the last time we got together, I don't know. Talk to me about this offline, maybe.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because we had the Patreon stuff, like the signed cards that I kept forgetting to give you, and I feel like this last time I probably forgot to give you something too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I do think you forgot to give me sign cards, but I had some, and we mailed all that out. So if
No,
we,
we did. We fixed that. We fixed that for sure.
yeah, I can't think of anything you owe me specifically. If you want to bring me boxes full of money from all of our Patreon success, I'll always accept those. I'll take them and add them to my vault under my bat cave.
Must be nice to have a vault in a bat cave, man.
It's actually empty, but the vault's nice. The vault is beautiful. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I can't get anything to put in it. I spent
Spent.
all of what I had on the vault.
Yep. I mean, it's optimism, right?
Right.
You're like,
Someday
well,
I'll need that
someday
vault.
I'll have something to
Yep.
keep in here.
Any day now.
Instead, you just let all the raccoons in there.
That is a good usage for a vault, I guess.
Yeah.
Just a huge raccoon party.
Fill it. Not like a lot of trash, but like a light layer of trash. And we'll have
Look,
fun.
the only reason raccoons go for trash is because people don't give them other things. Like, give a raccoon a hot dog, he won't take your trash. That's my philosophy.
So light layer of hot dogs in your vault.
Right.
Okay.
Much better. Yeah.
What else? We had to talk about one other thing, I think.
I don't know.
Crap. Okay. Standard then?
Oh, we wanted to talk about Unfinity because you were really excited
Oh, yep.
for it. Yeah.
Yep. That was it. Okay, so you made this tweet that was like, oh, like this made up card and this made up card and this made up card, but you know, whatever, at least it shouldn't be legal in Pauper or whatever. And I was just like, I don't know if these are like Warhammer cards or Unfinity card or Flesh and Blood cards. I honestly like didn't know. And I was like, I'm gonna check the comments, and it was just more of the same. It was like people just saying the same stuff.
That is the joke. That is, in fact, what I was going for.
So what were the actual name? Were they just completely made up?
Completely made up. Yes,
Oh,
they were completely made up.
dude, well done. Well done.
Thank you. I think this was spurred by the pauper bannings, which The most common sentiment I heard about them, and Pauper's like it's kind of its own thing. Like I don't expect it
I
to really permeate through.
I didn't even see that there were Pauper banning.
Okay, there were. The only
Oh,
comments I saw on them were I don't know what any of these cards do. 4 cards were banned, I believe, and
were
every
they all
single
Baldur's
person.
Gate cards?
Yep, they were the Baldur's Gate Commander initiative cards. I think they were only the initiative cards. And if you don't know what the initiative does,
I was gonna say I've seen some of those cards. I
yep,
don't know what initiative actually does.
it's like an I don't, I don't actually know this. My understanding of it is like an auto dungeon that works similarly to the Monarch. So if you have initiative, you get to advance in a specific dungeon.
Okay.
I think.
So
Could be
okay,
wrong.
the
Don't
cards
quote
that
me on
are
that.
banned are a
Yep.
4 mana 1/4 flyer
Yeah.
ETB initiative,
Yep.
a 4 mana 0/4 defender ETB initiative,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tap to give a creature menace and haste until end of turn. A 5 mana 5/3 menace ETB initiative, and
That's the black one,
the
right?
last one I can't wait. 4 mana 1/5 ETB initiative. When this becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller loses 5 life. So initiative must be busted because these cards are definitely not getting
No,
played on rate.
dude, the dungeon is messed up. There's a lava axe at like step 2 of the dungeon or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
it is a very silly dungeon. And I guess the state of Pauper was people were just playing Lotus Petal Dark Ritual to put those creatures into play on
Oh
turn
my
one.
god.
That was their plan. So I don't know if folks remember, we did an episode, I believe it was called The Keys to the Castle of Antris, where we talked about just every single format and what we would do with ban lists. And I am of the opinion that Pauper can't keep taking in all of these nonsense cards from these nonsense set and actually resemble anything that like people want to get from the format. Like but at the same time, I also don't know who Pauper is supposed to be for. I don't know if it's for anyone at this point. So it's just got like this horrible, horrible identity crisis. And these cards are just another example of like, here's an entire mechanic that they inserted into the format that just doesn't work. It doesn't work on power scale and it messes up everything so, so badly. And, there's people who really love this format and the format was just ruined for like 3 weeks. And they acted quickly, which I'll give credit for. That's nice to see. But you could also just like not put all of these stupid supplemental products into every single Eternal format where I just don't think people want them there. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just like cranky old man, but I really don't
Listen,
think people want them there.
back in the day when you would get like a true name nemesis like once a year for legacy, granted true name nemesis was not the most fun or whatever, but
Yep.
when you would occasionally get something new dropped into your format after like years of stagnation, I
Yeah.
thought that was cool.
It was, but the whole
So
context was different. There were no modern exclusive sets. Like basically, modern exclusive sets have now taken that role to fuel all these interesting cards that can actually hit legacy formats. And like
yeah,
that's its own discussion whether those should exist. But once they do, don't put the other supplemental shit in there. Like you have a way to get these interesting cards into the format now. And obviously, Modern Horizons has done that in spades. It completely changed the legacy format. So mission accomplished, and you don't have to do it with cards that nobody knows. Like again, Insular Circle that is like kind of old schoolish competitive MTG. So I get why my people don't know these cards. That makes a lot of sense to me. But it's the only response I saw. It was just like I don't know what any of these cards do.
yeah. I mean, that's fair. I don't know. I would ask the Pauper people what they want because I'm not them, and I think that we likely have wildly diverging goals and needs and wants. So I'm not going to speak to what they should or should not do with Pauper or whatever. That's up for them to decide and argue for, you know?
Yeah, it is. I get the feeling that like they want to engage with these niche communities to a point and understand what the players actually want, except on one vital thing, and that is, are you willing to buy these new cards from these new sets? Because that's what they're doing. There's no room for debate. You're going to have a reason to buy these cards, and that's not that's not up for discussion. So, if that's the one thing you won't move on, that's a problem I see as unsolvable.
Yeah. I mean, for Pauper, it's less relevant. Maybe it's more relevant for well, I guess like Pauper for specifically like the Baldur's Gates sets or whatever. Anything that comes as a booster release, it's pretty easy to just like buy the singles. Maybe for, any sort of secret lair or even the Commander Precons, maybe it's a little bit trickier to get the singles for that stuff, even if
Yep.
it's a common, but
Yep, for
most
sure. I mean,
paupers
common doesn't
also,
really mean anything in that spot, right? It's still just limited print.
yeah, exactly. But most paupers also just played online. So as
Yep,
long as they are distributing those cards effectively, which they didn't really with like the Minsk and Boo Planeswalker, took a while for like it to actually come out on Magic Online, and legacy people want to play with it. Now it's like winning a bunch of stuff. So
yep,
like when they do come out with that stuff, like then they actually have to release it on Moto, which sometimes they don't do, which can be pretty frustrating too.
agreed. Frustrating is how I would phrase it.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I'm just gonna stay out of it. Whatever happens, happens. Like I could put in my 2 cents and just be like, well, this seems silly, but I think that there are a lot of other people who are way more in it than I am, who are also voicing the same opinion, and they know more than me. So like, why does it matter if I add my voice to the chorus? Like if they want someone with a platform and like I don't know some clout or whatever to say stuff, then sure, fine, I'll happily do that. But it doesn't seem like they need me. So.
It's a good way of looking at it. How about I get your opinion on something though that you are engaged with? You're headed to a legacy tournament next weekend, and I know you have affinity for the format. I know you would still play legacy. Were you given the opportunity to do so?
Yeah.
So these cards also are in legacy. Don't really matter there. Legacy has a higher bar to entry, but at any point, any one of these cards could matter, as we see with Minsk and Boo for sure, kind of doing a lot of work on the format. Also about to enter legacy are a bunch of cards from Unfinity, which is the kind of sequel to the previous goofy sets we've had, Unhinged,
It's like the
Unglued.
fourth onset, I think.
I believe I think it's Unhinged. Unglued was the first. Unhinged, Unstable, Unfinity, as I believe the order of these sets.
Yeah.
What is different this go around is that many of the cards in Unfinity are in fact legal in several formats. Commander, Pauper, I think. I don't know. As far as I can tell, the only stuff that's legal is like rares and mythics, but that may or may not be true. Because why would I be able to keep track of any of those things? And then Legacy is the one that is really interesting to me and really kind of, again, frustrating is the only word I would use, because I have such fondness for Legacy as like this showcase of the game's history. And granted, that has been more tenuous over the years. It's been harder and harder to do that as Modern Horizon stuff has happened, as these Commander sets has happened. But still, it's got its backbone of revised dual lands, and you occasionally see weird things like a Chains of Mephistopheles. And it's one of the things that drew me so much to Legacy when I was first like finding my competitive footing. And now it's going to have a bunch of unstable cards, which may not do anything. They're probably not going to reshape the format, but they could. They definitely could. And we have Space Jace, which is like the first Planeswalker, blue-white Planeswalker, 4-mana Planeswalker. So right in the range of a card that could matter in Legacy. This one seems not to at first blush, but I don't know. Like there's going to be something eventually that is going to work its way into Legacy. And
So what? Cross that bridge when you get there, or if someone wants to show up to FNM with meme Space Jace deck, like that seems like a net positive to me.
I
Like,
don't buy it. We
I
just
mean,
want something very different out of our Legacy format.
well, I would like to have it be like pure and competitive, or what, but like that's not. I've been to Legacy locals, man. Like that is not how it works.
When you say it's not how it works,
People show up with whatever they want, and they try and have fun with it too. Like they will build meme decks
I,
occasionally,
I
or
I agree, but how much of that is rooted in the past, and how much of it is rooted in? I mean, obviously, we've never had the option of it being rooted in.
there's no reason it can't be both.
There is no reason it can't be both. That's a fair statement.
Like it, if you're talking about Space Jace making 3 battlefields or whatever, is that frustrating and annoying? Yes, absolutely. But in small doses, I think that's okay. So like, as long as the card is not Jace the Mind Sculptor plus 3 battlefields or whatever, then who cares? I mean,
But they'll never stick to that. Like this is the buy a
know
box thing all
I
over
know what
again,
you're
where like the
saying
buy a box didn't matter until they
until
made Nexus of Fate,
right.
and then it mattered a lot.
Yes. And I know what you're saying, that like eventually it's going to be a problem. Yes, that's absolutely true. Do you want to cut this off before it happens and like stop whatever amount of net fund would be had until then? I mean, I guess that's a way you could do it. I would just try to make sure that that stuff doesn't happen, but I know that that's also a tall order. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is, man. I think that, you know, for the most part, just let people have fun if they want to try and have fun or whatever. The problem is when Space Jace is actually true name Nemesis or whatever, and it's like, well, this sucks. And I don't know. Just at that point, be more willing to ban things, I suppose. Like back in True Name world, I think that if something was that egregious, they probably would have banned it in today's standards, you know? But back then they didn't, and it was pretty miserable for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I agree with everything you're saying. What I'm voicing here is more frustration than like disbelief or anger. It's just like feeling like there's very few spaces that are tailored towards the way I want to engage with Magic in Magic as a whole anymore. It just nothing is shaped towards me.
This could be chicken or egg, but also like you're not engaging with Magic a ton. So
I think it is I think it is me making decisions based on what is making me happy. And the way Magic is being shaped not making me happy. And using that to not engage a bunch. And yeah, chicken or egg is a good way of putting it. But I am pretty confident that my frustration is what is keeping me away from the game more than I am away from the game. So I'm getting frustrated by these things.
well, I don't think you being away from the game means that you're getting frustrated. I just thought that you're not engaging at all. So like, why does it matter what they do? You know, like you're
Well, do
complaining.
they want me to engage? Like that's the question, right? Like
Well,
that's why it matters.
how do they get you back? It's not by maintaining status quo and doing things the way that they've been doing, because you know at some point you stop playing like Legacy on Moto anyway. So
Yeah, they can't get me back. And that's what it, like the ship has sailed. That's what it
okay,
is.
so then you're probably not going to play Legacy live or like travel around the country to play Legacy. So you're probably just out of Legacy period, because I don't see a great way to get you back into it unless they somehow like put it on Arena and it's not terrible or something. But even
Probably,
then,
probably. I like it would take a. They have just gone so far down the road that like it's not that they can't, it's that they won't. There's no reason for them to. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if they really wanted to get me back, there's certainly steps they could do, and I would engage again. But they're never ever going to do. I'm just realistic about like the possibility of that happening
well,
more than I think it's
what they want
impossible.
to do is get you to spend money, and if you're not going to spend money, the other people who may enjoy Unfinity or Baldur's Gate or Initiative or whatever are the ones who are going to do that, right?
Yeah, they have to spend the money I'm not spending anymore, so they need to appeal to them even harder. It's like
Right.
it's a very snowbally situation for sure.
So we need some format that doesn't suck, that stays relatively interesting, that doesn't have fake stuff in it, that
Yep.
has some competitive aspect, that has some amount of like notoriety or importance baked in,
Yep.
and ease of entry, or like less barrier to entry or something. It's just like, I don't know, man. There's like standard, pioneer, modern. You might have issues with a lot of those formats or whatever, but that is kind of where it should be. It probably shouldn't be, you know, complaining about Pauper or maybe even Legacy at this point. I mean, I do feel like Legacy should be the thing that would appeal to us who have been playing the game for like 20 years, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying is like something for the old heads. It feels like the missing part of the puzzle. And
You
like a
just,
Magic classic feels like a thing that should exist almost
yeah,
certainly.
yeah. I mean, you put it like that with World of Warcraft
Yeah.
doing similar stuff.
30-year-old game,
That
even older than World of Warcraft. Like, there's got to be something that is meant to embrace that original experience. And you know, I don't think it's only nostalgia based either. I don't think that's the
I
only
mean,
pull to something like that.
people are going to point you to pre-modern or old school or whatever.
Sure, and that's not a bad suggestion, honestly. I think like I think I am looking for something that will continue to expand over time. Like I'm not looking for something fixed,
Yeah.
but it needs to be more rooted in the traditional Magic spaces for me to
Honestly,
really like.
Canadian Highlander was hitting that for me for a little bit, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
I
Sure.
also didn't have anyone to play with. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
because that's the huge part of this. There needs to be like a
correct.
community and like something to play for. All of that has to happen.
Yeah. And a lot of the same stuff is true for like why I haven't played Flesh and Blood. Like if you were my roommate, for example, I would have learned how to play Flesh and Blood, right? Because it's like, you're here, you have the cards, you want to play. Yes, at some point I would play with you.
Mhm.
But I'm about as far removed from that as possible, where I live by myself. I don't know anyone here. I certainly don't know anyone who plays Fab, right? So there's not an online client, and a lot of these same things are true for. There's not an online client. You wanna promote your
No,
silly thing, because
no,
it's
I
not
don't. I
good.
don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's not an online client, and the same is true for old school, pre-modern, like all these things, right? So you need to build it, and then people will come, and there has been some amount of community effort on that part to get those things going, and I certainly applaud that, and I'm happy that that exists, but it is not enough, because we also care about like stakes and importance or whatever, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise we would just cube draft or something, just find some way to play casual Magic. I mean, a lot of people have turned to Commander or CEDH or whatever at this point, because there's not a whole lot of other offerings for us, right? But there needs to be more to actually get people interested and involved and want to hold on to it long term, which is what competitive Magic did.
Right. Yeah, we have this discussion a lot. I know we like kind of repeat it almost to death, but I do think like expressing displeasure is worthwhile. I think longing for something that really captures the essence of something you love is completely acceptable. And I also think it's completely acceptable to understand that's probably not going to happen and be more tempered about it and not get angry, just get frustrated. That's where I'm at these days.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's worth getting angry about it, but certainly voicing frustration occasionally is worthwhile and relevant, or at least, making snarky tweets and getting some likes and good brain chemicals and e-hugs, as I guess Tommy Ashton puts it, which I think is great.
Love the e-hugs.
But at some point, you're just kind of like shouting into the void and repeating the same stuff, and it's like, yeah, we all feel this way. Like, is there any point to like continue
Mm.
hashing it out and bringing
No,
it up? And it's
that's
like,
fair. I mean, I do think there's like a bridge for everyone, right? And I will say that some people who very much seem like on board with the universe beyond stuff are not as on board with Unfinity stuff entering things like Legacy. But everyone's going to have their own line, and it's probably pretty arbitrary where you set yours, and mine's maybe a little higher than most.
yeah, we all have our metrics or whatever for what we would consider a real Magic card to be. Like, oh, this is a card that has a place in Legacy because it is a Magic card, and having like a Frodo card is pushing it, I think, for a lot of people. And
Yep.
then having cards like Space Jace, or things that do a bunch of like rolling dice and what, it's like those feel less like Magic cards, right? Like those are pretty clearly more fake compared to what a normal Magic card looks like. And I understand people being more likely to push back on that stuff, and I think that's fine. I just assume that a lot of that stuff is not meant to hit in Legacy, and if it does, they will address it kind of similarly how they addressed Initiative and Pauper. And like, yeah, Pauper got messed up for a few weeks, and that sucks, but it's just cost of doing business.
Yep. Doing a lot of business.
A
Cost of
lot
doing
of business, a lot of initiatives,
business.
a lot of love axes, I heard. So
Yep.
anyway, can we talk about Standard, man?
Yeah, I would like to talk about Standard.
I believe the
Interesting
next.
things going on in Standard.
Okay, there are things.
I think they're interesting. I don't know. I mean, like, it's not a complete reshape of the format, but I think there is some
Yes.
evolution happening.
There is definitely, and I'm just not going to try and sell people that it's interesting enough for you to want to pay attention. However, I will note that I believe the next Arena PTQ is Standard, so good time to get into it post rotation. Your Dominaria cards will be legal for like 2 years, right? So
Yeah,
that's all well and good. Black seems to be pretty overpowered, so if you invest wild cards into some black cards, those are probably going to be around for a while. So just a good time to get into it. I briefly looked at the RCQ schedule and did not see many standard RCQs near me, but also they're not all up yet or anything. And then
Yeah.
I don't know, even at the gaming arena place we went to, talking to people, just like, do you have your store schedule yet, and they're just like, ha, no, right? And it's like, oh, that's like a week and a half away, so
Hmm.
kind of awkward, but it is what it is. There are reasons to get into it potentially, but it also doesn't seem like Standard is having its full on comeback. So tread carefully. Maybe you want to use those dollars or those wild cards on something else, or invest into Moto to continue playing Pioneer or Modern or Initiative Free Pauper, whatever you want to do. But we started from a place where black was the best color by far. There it was 9 of the top 10 most winningest decks and like 12 of like the top 15 most winningest decks. Now there's a little bit of diversity both in the black decks but also in the other stuff that you can do in the format. So you are correct that things are happening. The format is getting reshaped. Liliana the Veil, for example, often doesn't show up in a lot of deck lists anymore because people have kind of adapted to it.
Wild. I would have expected more time for that card. That's all I'll say. And I think it'll come back around. It
will
never be absent, but I would have expected it to take longer for it to be forced out.
Part of the reason is that folks are branching off into 3 colors. So casting like a 1BB card is a little bit more difficult when you're also trying to cast like Corpse Appraiser or Riveteer's Charm or whatever. So that also makes sense. But the non-black decks specifically also have a lot of things that are just making tokens. Like Wedding Invitation is certainly a big one, but then there are some of the other decks that have the Raise the Alarm, like Resolute Reinforcements or whatever it's called. So
yeah, I think everyone has an option at least to account for Liliana, be it haste creatures or just things that are a little bit stickier. Up and down, nobody's not accounting for the card. So
right, so Josh got his case. He got his stock. We bought some standard cards. I hope that standard becomes relevant because I'm interested in playing the stuff that I was building when I was at his place last weekend. Was like trying to figure out what I guess was incidentally good against the black decks. And I started playing like some Esper, started working on a couple different Jund decks, and now it looks like people have figured out like a good Jund recipe that has worked. I played with it a little bit and can confirm that like the deck does feel pretty good. And then other than that, there's still like some big score Sanctuary Warden type of industry stuff I want to try out, which other people have been doing too. So I do think that there's not a ton of stuff you can do, but as far as like aggro, mid range, control type of stuff, like all of this is present.
Yeah, it's creeping in. I think your perception of Jund is spot on. I think those decks are starting to find their footing, which is interesting considering we saw last week. I think the trend was towards counter magic for the most part.
Yeah, a lot of make disappears and negates.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see Jund sort of take its place in that world because usually you expect them to suffer a little bit when they are the black deck without access to counter magic. But they're just sort of like sticky and annoying, and everything they cast will win the game. So if that's the case, something's going to get through eventually. And it's not like these decks have, 24 counter spells. They are playing spot counter spells to pick off key things. But if everything's key, then what are you going to pick off?
Yeah. So there were a couple standard challenges last weekend, as there are, every weekend. This one was on September 18th, but was posted on the 19th. So if you go looking, I think that's the one. And for Magic Online stuff, you can go to mtgo.com and then scroll down a little bit and just click on deck lists, and just like all the Magic Online results show up. And you should probably have that bookmarked if you don't already. But the standard challenge, first place was Grixis midrange, and this one is kind of interesting because, kind of like you mentioned, they moved away from counterspells entirely. There are also 3 Airtie Resurrected and 3 Shieldred the Apocalypse, so a lot of 4-drops, whereas before you weren't seeing like a ton of them. And then this one also doesn't have any 5s, instead just playing like a bunch of 4s. 26 land, which is good. It is certainly better than 25 because you do want to make every single land drop. But I definitely remember playing these Grixis decks and being like, oh, I kind of want a 27th, but that was also when I had, 3 Evelyns in my deck. So maybe it's a little bit lighter now, a little bit leaner.
I could see that. I mean, this deck doesn't have a ton of velocity, right? Like it doesn't have a lot of ways to convert mana into cards.
Well, Bankbuster, Fable, Underdog, Corpse Appraiser.
that actually feels on the low end for the way
Sure.
standard decks look now. I get it. I also feel the same way. Basically, I always want to add a land to everything, but I understand why there is some hesitance here, and just like you kind of need your stuff to get the job done. So well, it is very interesting to see 4 drops unlocked again, and I think a lot of that has to do. I mean, I guess Shieldred has been here the whole time, but a lot of it has to do with Liliana being less prevalent, and you don't have to worry about like, oh, here's my 4 drop onto an empty battlefield, and it just gets blown up right away.
Yeah, I mean, Airtie is a pretty good four to have against Liliana, both because of
Sure, yeah,
flash
Flash is
and the
always
fact that
good.
it just like kills it or counters it or whatever. So
Yeah,
Airtie has been solid. I do think three is a lot, but it is a fairly clean answer to Shieldred, and you see a lot of folks just configuring their decks a little bit better. Like this one has Rona's Vortex, Fires of Victory, Soul
yeah. Rona's
Transfer.
Vortex is a cool ad. I like seeing that pop up.
I don't like it very much, but I do get it.
I mean, as far as 4 mana removal spells go, this is a very, very good one, right?
Yeah. I think
And
like
and it's got the versatility of also being a 1 mana removal spell. I think that's exactly what you want in these type of decks.
I think unsummon your Shieldred is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
I would be way, way happier with this if you could also like bounce your own Corpse Appraiser.
Okay. Sure.
So that's all. It's just a little bit clunky, maybe not as versatile as I'd like, but I mean, for 1 mana, it's hard to do better.
Yeah, especially when there's just like not a lot of competition in the cheap spell slot right now. So it's just nice to get more ones into your deck.
Yep. Second place is Jund, and I'm gonna actually talk about this specifically and go through this because you say Jund, and it's like it's hard to picture exactly what you mean, right? Because it
Yeah, yeah.
could be like Soul of Windgrace, could be Titan of Industry, Cruelty of Gix, stuff like that. So this is from Gruul Aggro. Again, 26 land, 12 creatures, 4 Blood Tithe Harvester, 4 Briar Bridge Tracker, 4 Workshop
Love seeing that
Warchief.
card back, by the way.
I'm on the fence, but I do like
One
the
of my
card.
favorites.
I
Yeah.
do like the card. It's you would normally expect to see Graveyard Trespasser, right?
Yeah. And I would be very happy with Briar Bridge Tracker instead, but I am a
Yeah.
Graveyard Trespasser hater.
Yep.
Always have been, so nothing changing there.
14 spells that are basically just removal spells. 4 Unleash the Inferno. A lot of people playing like Bankbusters and Fables and Meathook Massacres and stuff. So this Unleash actually cleans up like a ton of stuff and is mana neutral with Shieldred, but then like maybe also kills their Bankbuster too. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a big swing.
4 Riveteer's Charm, good way to grind. Also, good answer to Shieldred. 2 Infernal Grass, 2 Flame Blessed Bolt, 2 Cut Down. A lot of the time, you see these 3-color decks, and they're like, well, I'm trying to play like a Triome or like a Haunted Ridge on turn 1 or whatever. So, like, the 1-mana removal is not that good. Maybe I'll just stick with the more expensive stuff. But I do like the fact that you have the cheap removal to enable double spell turns a lot more like effectively and early. Flame Blessed Bolt for opposing underdogs is pretty nice. Deck also has 2 Bankbuster, 2 Meathook Massacre, 4 Fables. So not going super huge or anything. And I think a lot of the power. This is the list that I have been playing, by the way. Is like the Unleashes, the Riveteer's Charms, the Workshop Warchiefs, just allowing you to grind so well.
It's interesting how small the green portion of this deck is. Like it's just the charm, Unleash the Inferno, and then the 2 creatures, Briarbridge Tracker and Workshop Warchief.
Yeah,
And
which is kind of why I was weirded out by the trackers, but when you're splashing Warchief, you're almost certainly going to have the mana for tracker anyway.
right, right, right. And it just goes to show like how adaptable this core is, this red black core, and how many different things you can slot into it very easily.
Yeah, the thing I don't necessarily like about this deck is 8 pain lands. I feel like that's so much, especially with like Unleash and Charm, and I had turns where I would have like Charm and Blood Tithe Harvester to cast, and it's just like, I get it. I also want my mana untapped, and if you're expecting to play against aggro and you want to be able to like cut down and Flame Blessed Bolt on turn 1, it makes complete sense. But I feel like there's a happier medium place where, like, for example, the Grixis deck above, I think has 6 pain lands. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that trimming down a little bit. I mean, I guess you do have the life gain of Workshop Warchief as somewhat an offset. It's interesting you mentioned aggro decks because I think like mostly didn't have to worry about that thus far in these standard challenges. Although one of the reasons this challenge is so interesting is because that changes over the course of this challenge. So
Third place, we have a Gruul deck with some Thundering Raijus. So doing a little bit of modifying things. I
Hmm.
mean, this is basically 36 creatures in 24 lands, right? Because Kamado
Yep.
faces Kakazan is basically a creature.
Yep.
Yavimaya Iconoclast is 1G 3/2 trample kicker R. When this enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it gets +1/+1 in haste until end of turn. So not quite as good as like a Gruul Spellbreaker or
Pretty
whatever.
damn good though. I mean, try and play Liliana into that, and I think it's gonna get blown up a lot.
Yeah, like
So
the trample haste is certainly nice at killing planeswalkers, but you get the mode of being able to play this as a 2 mana 3/2 trampler. So like I don't know, maybe this is just better. But 4 copies of Squee Dubious Monarch, pretty good against Liliana. Korean Beast Caller, Phoenix Chick, Llanowar Loam Speaker, Ascendant Pack Leader, which is kind of weird because you generally don't have like a ton of fours in these decks.
yeah, you have to
But this
cheat to
one,
get there.
yeah, this one has Raiju and Halana and Elena.
Yep.
So like Pack Leader might actually just get some counters incidentally, you know? So you have like the 1 drops to start, you have a little bit of ramping, you have a bunch of fours, you have some staying power with like Squee and stuff. This looks pretty solid.
I agree. It's very linear, but as far as a way to challenge all these decks, which are mostly cheating and not having to worry about things like this, yeah, just play your creatures. There's no like real sweepers short of Meat Hook Massacre in the format. So if you get your sizing right, you can potentially outscale. But even then, you're just sticky. Like you have very good recursiveness in the form of like Phoenix Chick and getting extra cards by virtue of Kamano faces Kakazan. And I think like as far as a 36 creature deck goes, your plans are actually pretty good here.
Yeah.
Also get to play Bouncer's Beatdown, which like it's hard to play that card, but when you get to, it's like, well, okay, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you get a thing big enough, that is maybe one of the cleanest answers to Shieldred, right? But
Yeah, 1 mana, just blow it up. Not bad.
for the main deck, there are no direct answers. It's just you're trying to make things bigger or like fly over or whatever, and that's kind of awkward because it has Death Touch, but it's still probably fine.
Yeah, I think you just like jam something kind of irrelevant into it, buffed up by Hannah and Elena, and then you end up in a pretty good spot.
Yep. And then in fourth place, we have Bant deck from Hogbog98. Arya, she streams a lot and is very, 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 very good. So um, probably can find some VODs of this deck, I would assume. But like this is Bant Storm the Festival deck. It
Love
is
this deck.
super interesting. Again, 26 lands, love it. But you can storm the festival into Grafted Identity, which is control magic, but additional cost. You have to sack a creature to cast it, and
Yep.
then the enchanted creature gets +1/+1. But if you storm the festival into it, it's completely fine. Teachings of the Kirin, which I actually don't even remember what this does. Like it mills yourself, you make a 1/1, put a counter on a thing, you exile it, and return to the battlefield transform as a 1/1. What's the backside actually do though?
The backside is when it attacks, you exile a target creature from a graveyard and you make a spirit, and then exile a
Yeah.
non-creature card +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. So
Hmm.
kind of like smallish effects, but when you get all the pieces of this card together, it's again like when we saw these sagas, the first thing we said, these are a lot of cardboard in one small
Yeah.
package, and this deck really benefits from that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I guess it is a decent engine for like welcoming vampire, and if you're just casting
Mm-hmm.
Grafted Identity. But yeah, I don't know. I think if I were just building this deck, I would probably play like
The
the
white spell.
loam 1/3 or whatever, you know. So
Okay, yeah.
I would have to see this card in action. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, like I
Um,
said, a lot of cardboard. The synergies with your tokens are pretty good. Welcoming Vampire is a good call out where you get to draw a card. So the timing works out in that scenario. So because when you transform, you do actually enter the battlefield with the new creature, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it with welcoming vampire is a good combo for the ramping creatures. Some root coil creepers, which are good, going super long with like Storm the
Love
Festival.
this card. I've always loved this card. I think it's
Yeah,
so
same.
good.
Yep. Catilda, which works pretty well with Wedding Announcement. I think I said Wedding Invitation earlier, but yeah, Wedding Announcement.
I
Some
think I use the two interchangeably. Actually,
I
we're
do
actually two
too.
different cards, so
I
that's
do
not good.
too.
Yeah.
I'm always talking about the good one though. Whatever the
Yeah.
bad one is, I'm not talking about
But
that
it
one.
does see some play. That's the problem. Like I occasionally see wedding invitations in lists. So
Nah, you probably just misread it.
no, I promise I saw one last week and I had to like double check. I don't know which list it was. I'll have to go back and find it.
All right, a couple Denix, random lifelinker that is good if you're pumping it. Disturb, I guess, takes advantage of teachings of Kieran and then shuts off Graveyard Trespasser, I suppose, or like the cruelty of Gix type of things, reanimating stuff, but just
Yeah,
fine
I
body.
mean, there's some reanimation floating around. I don't think that's really what it's about here, but just way to get a nice body into play.
Yeah. Bunch of Emperors, couple Ren and Sevens, and an Ow the Dawn Sky. I like the White Dragon.
Yeah, it's showing up in more places these days. Really cool rejuvenation of a lot of older cards that I think are kind of being slept on. Welcoming Vampire was one that you were very, very high on at release, understandably so. I think the card is
Yeah,
very good.
I didn't think that it was necessarily going to be great off the bat, but it's just like this is such a good tool to have access to.
Yeah, great engine, and finally seeing it come together. And this deck looks promising to me. Like as far as output, I believe this is on par with the black decks. I don't see anything that is like a fundamental flaw of this deck. It can go very large. In post board games, you have a lot of really good options for whatever your opponent is doing. I love the 3 disdainful strokes. Destroy evil. We mentioned clean answers to Shouldred, so that's a completely fine one. Plenty of enchantments running around. So as far as decks that make me want to pick up standard and play, this is very high on the list. Like this is exactly what I'd like to be doing.
Yeah, and if everyone's doing mid range stuff, we talked about how the best way to beat them is to find a thing that goes like slightly bigger than them, and I think this is it. And Grafted Identity, especially with Storm the Festival, I think is an awesome place to start.
Yeah, I was playing that card a lot in like early versions of Storm the Festival I was building, and it was just great. I mean, like even when you play it fair, it's still a very, very powerful card.
Yeah. Fifth place, another Jund deck. This one's slightly different. Only 2 Unleash the Infernos, Voltage Surge in the 1 mana removal slot. Still has some Shieldreds in here. Only 25 land. Hate it.
Yeah, Graveyard Trespasser too. So this deck managed to anger both of us in one pass.
Sixth place, Mono Black. One thing I will say, playing Jund against Mono Black, was that I could still pretty easily get burned out with like Invoke the Despairs, Shieldred stuck around for a little bit too long. Trespasser hits you, Underdog keeps coming back. Like they have like meat hooks too. So
yeah, they've got good reach for sure for a mono black deck anyway.
Right. So you're like, oh yeah, the War Chief gains you like 3 life, and I was just thinking, from my experience, that's not a lot. I kind of want some more,
Yeah. No, I feel that. I think the mono black deck is cool and it has a unique, like, obviously it's very easy to splash in this format. Like you don't get punished all that much, but I do think the mono black deck has a unique angle that gets to play, and it's exactly what you're describing, just like a little bit more annoying reach than you would expect.
Yep. This one has 4 Field of Ruin. I don't really like that. Roadside Reliquary is actually pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just play a couple of those instead.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people advocate that change.
Yeah, there's not a lot of stuff that you want to field. There with more 3-color decks showing up, I think that yes, in theory, you can maybe take them off a color or something, but it's just not really worth it. The Reliquary is so much better.
I agree with you right now. I think at some point maybe we'll find deck lists that are so greedy that you just get a freebie from Field of Ruin, and that's when I'd look to make the switch back to it. But we're not there right now. So
7th place, we have an Esper list, and the Esper lists have not quite figured out what they want to be doing. Definitely
kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of differences, specifically in the 2-drop slot and the 4-drop slot. So this one has some Denix, a random Jadar, a Malevolent Hermit. This is on top of Tenacious Underdog, of course. And we've seen like the 2/3 lifelink Gravedigger. I think that card's solid. I think Denic just in general is pretty solid. And then for 4 drops, Obscura Interceptor, which I do like, but it's like you have Shieldred, you have Airtie, and you already have Wandering Emperor, and I think there was another Sarah Paragon. Like that's another solid one. Maybe not exactly a 4-drop, but like you have a ton of options. And my experience was that I liked the Gravedigger a decent amount, but like 4 felt like too much. So I could see mixing that with, I don't know. I like Malevolent Hermit. I could see that. The card seems solid. Maybe play like 3 and a Denic or something. But for 4 drops, I think Shieldred in this deck with Rafine is just like a little too good. So I find it hard to believe that you shouldn't be playing Shieldred in this deck.
I like when people don't play Shieldred because I start to feel a little bit more sane. But like I said, I'm convinced I'm the idiot at this point. So don't listen to me. You probably should be playing Shieldred.
Well, listen, if Shieldred had Hexproof, you'd be like, oh, that card's pretty good.
True.
Right?
That is accurate.
And you're looking at a lot of decks that don't have a lot of ways to kill it. So that's kind of what it is. Like those cards fail our test, like our ETB doesn't do anything test when they don't die, or when they do die immediately.
Yeah, but
when there's a lot of things that remove it.
At this point, just punish them. Like
I know, but people are still not doing that.
I know the decks that excite me do a good job of it. Like they just account for these things. Like, grafted identity, your Shieldred is a very good way to punish them, especially when they're not playing entry. They're not playing enough removal to actually answer their Shieldred. So
right. Exactly.
I would just be doing something that punished the people playing Shieldred as opposed to being the one playing Shieldred. But you're right. People aren't doing that at a large enough scale. So
the other way to get around that is by having something on board that allows you to take advantage of it immediately. So like play Shieldred, attack with Rafine is a way to make it so that even if your Shieldred dies, like you still got some value. You still got something out of it. And Rafine, especially, granted, this is more of like, a turn 6 situation or whatever. But when you're attacking with more than one creature and like getting multiple Shieldred triggers, it just puts you out of range. You have infinite time then.
Yeah. Just, sharing some bad beat stories, which obviously no one likes. My first loss in the arena event was my opponent played Shieldred and I had the removal spell and I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I gained so much tempo from this, 2 life, no big deal. And they had the dive down for my removal spell. And I was just like, flip my keyboard over and outraged.
Yeah, buddy.
I'll do it.
Oh man, your opponent sounds like a genius, honestly.
Yeah, great move.
Thing I will note though, this Esper deck, 27 land, hell yeah.
Yeah, get those lands in there. The next Esper deck, 27 lands as well. It looks very similar, actually.
One last point. So when I was building these Esper decks and playing with them, trying to figure out, what 2 drops, what 4 drops, etc. Wandering Emperor, pretty big disappointment.
Interesting.
I don't want to go too hard down the like, you should be cutting this from your deck's train or whatever, but we used to be pretty set on playing 3 or 4 or whatever. Now I'm like, I don't know, 2 seems completely fine to me, if that.
That is interesting. And I have some good news for you before I move you on to the next deck. It is the exact same 75 cards. So,
oh, cool.
Settled on this list apparently. And a nice performance from the 27 land Esper deck 2 times.
We got to talk about 9th place deck too.
Okay, let's do it.
This has to make you happy, right? You're looking at this
absolutely. I mean, like this is something that looked very viable to me as we were going through the previews, and just has a lot of my favorite cards in it. So I'm here for it.
All right. It starts with 4 copies of Swiftwater Cliffs, which is the Izzet Coastal Tower that
gain a life.
ETB tapped, you gain a life.
Got to do what you got to do.
I've been there. Where was the format where we were playing like a Bloodfell Caves or whatever? Because like the mana was just that bad.
That was like the.
I think that was a Ravnica format,
right?
It was what?
Wasn't it the Red Black Aggro format? I feel like it was an arena format.
I think that was just like a guild gate. Like it was even worse.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, these are not bad. I've seen them show up in some deck lists. There are some that show up in the red-black decks because they're very lightly splashing red for like Blood Tithe Harvester and Fable and not much else. And then they're still trying to cast Liliana on 3 or cast Invoke Despair or whatever. So sometimes you just need more lands that are actual dual lands, But Izzet deck, 25 lands, 4 Fable, 2 Bankbuster, nothing too shocking there. Creatures, 4 Aether Channeler, 2 Leer, 2 Leer, Disciple of the Drowned, 1 Hullbreaker Horror, okay, and a couple Temporal Firestorms as your Burn Down the House upgrade, and then just some of the best spells ever, right? Like Flame Blessed Bolt, Fires of Victory, Fading Hope, Make Disappear, 2 Negates, 2 Memory Deluge, 4 Consider, 1 Abrade. I think I would maybe build this deck a little bit differently, but I do kind of love it.
What do you feel is missing from this deck? Because I wonder if you're going to have the same answer as I have.
I'm really missing 1 copy of Celestis.
So all I want is just like a single hard reload. and it could be the even like the X spell
Oh
that you
no, you
play
want the
at.
brain geyser.
I think that's fine. I think that's all you need here because you're just looking to trade, stabilize. You have like Ether Channeler to build tempo, and you're just like making your land drops, moving on. A lot of times, all you're going to need is Hellbreak or Horror to lock the game from there. But having like one more insurance policy is exactly what I'm looking for. Although I think Celestis is a fine
My
inclusion as well.
Well, you're right that sometimes you just need more pieces of cardboard. And I was definitely playing with a copy or two of Thirst for Discovery in my Lear decks.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah,
And I think that that's okay. But also, when you're talking about like, oh, I just need a thing that gives me access to a bunch of resources, I would just play a third Lear at that point.
maybe, maybe that's right.
Because like what's better, like Lear with a mana open for Fading Hope, which granted this deck only has 2 Fading Hopes. So like if you're going harder on Lear, maybe you want a third Fading Hope. But would you rather like draw 4 cards or like play Lear with a Fading Hope open? I usually it's Fading Hope, but
Yeah, especially in a non-aggressive format. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe like in this format, I think I agree that third layer could be better. Abstractly, it feels like that is a missing piece, but maybe it's just not necessary. Maybe that's not how the games play out.
yeah, I mean you
I love the
also
flexibility of that card, though. I think it's quite good. Like, they're just like the 5 mana draw 3 as a flash threat,
sure.
or you get to the late game and hard reload. I think that card is better than it's getting credit for.
I mean you have Deluge too. Plus this deck has like Fable, Bankbuster, which were things that I think were not out when we were doing Lear stuff.
Correct.
Right? So you have like a little bit more filtering. You
Yeah.
have the ether channelers too for like a little bit more of like card advantage stuff. The cool thing to me about this deck is that they incorporate Bankbuster Fable, which is like the best set of early game tool. Like these are your brainstorms for standard, right?
Yep.
And basically every mid-range deck is doing that if they have access to red mana. If not, they're certainly playing Bankbuster. But this deck has Ether Channeler, which oddly is maybe going to make the 1/1 more than I would have thought because those two together accrue the Bankbuster, but also
Okay. Yeah.
the Channeler and to an extent like the 1/1 protect your Lear from Liliana and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the channelers looked kind of weird to me, but then it's just like, oh, well, there's Bankbuster, you protect Lear from Lily. Card is also just, fine by itself. Like extra bodies for Make Disappear. I mean, this deck is so well built. I just love it.
No, I agree. It's impressive, and it's one of the reasons why I thought Standard was worth talking about this week. I think it has just the right amount of innovation in this tournament to sort of renew my hope for a really interesting Standard format. And we're gonna have to see if any of these newer archetypes pick up in popularity. If there is a resurgence of aggro and Gruul form, if these weird Izzet tempo decks can start to put some W's on the board, all potentially really exciting developments.
So, a couple other random things. In 16th place, there's an ominous roost,
Yeah, saw
otherworldly
that.
gaze, disturb, Rafine deck, which is cool as hell. If you don't know what those cards are, same basically. Don't worry about it too much. But if you want to go digging for that, that's there.
I get from this deck, I get really big. Like, man, remember when the format was just like taken over by the weird token decks that used the black-white enchantment hidden stockpile, and what
Yes,
was the anointed procession?
right.
And you just go, I'm getting those vibes from this deck. It's not quite as hard, but it does a lot of the same stuff, and it seems very, very cool to me.
Yeah, it's funny too because I don't know. It's an otherworldly gaze deck, and I don't even know if Sam did anything with this card. I think he did, but I just sort of associate that card with him.
Yeah,
And then obviously the anointed procession thing was all him. So
yeah, this deck does cool stuff, man. This is another one that is quite exciting. And this is CFT Sock 3, of course, was the person who popularized the combo deck back in the day, the Goldspan Dragon combo deck that sort of again took over the format for a little while. So someone worth noting. A
and
lot of
on the
good
same
results.
and on the same team as Arya.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. So that team in particular doing work in this standard challenge.
All right, so one last deck from the standard league that I want to highlight. I don't
Oh
know if you
Lord.
went through these
This
decks
is
if you
a
saw
deep
this.
cut. No, I have not seen any of these, so this is exciting for me.
Okay, so this is from Alarmobot. 24 land, lot of triomes. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have some ley line bindings, of course. We have some mulches, 4 copies of mulch, 3 Soul of Windgrace, which, I mean, I like that you're like doing land stuff. It's awkward that mulch doesn't put lands in the graveyard, but it could give you a bunch of stuff to like discard a Windgrace and bring back, right?
Yeah.
Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So, whatever. Maybe mulch draws you a bunch of cards to discard. Maybe unlikely with only 24 land, but whatever. Teachings of the Kirin is back. That's also here. Okay.
Card's a banger, apparently.
Weatherseed Treaty. You know this one?
No. This is from the new set. You search a land.
Yeah. So 2G, read ahead. First one is Rampant Growth. Second one is make a 1/1. Third thing is pump some stuff, right?
Yep.
Has some Kami Wars because we're doing domain stuff. We have all the colors, right?
Ooh, that is okay.
And then the reason for the teachings of the Kirin and the Weatherseed Treaty making the random 1/1s are 4 copies of Spirit Sisters Call. I guarantee you worked on this set. I guarantee you have no idea what this does.
Nope. You're gonna have to read it to me.
3 dub B enchantment. At the beginning, this is mythic. At the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with the chosen card. If you do, return the chosen card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains. If this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. There's also 4 Titan of Industries. So you're either stacking the tokens to get back like Titans or Soul of Wind Graces, or you're sacking, the
enchantments.
The enchantments themselves to get back like Kami Wars and stuff.
I do remember this card now. There is a card in this deck. Well, I guess there's not too many options. This isn't going to be a very fun game. There's a card in this deck that I strongly advised nerfing, and it did get nerfed.
Is it Blossom Prancer?
No, it's not Blossom.
Because there's one of those.
There's one of those, and I think that card is fine, and it couldn't.
Kami War used to just be 5 mana, right?
Yeah, I think that was the change I suggested. It was very, very scary. Like, it all goes back to this just being like a really, really card intense mechanic, like the saga mechanic and the transforming saga is just creating so much cardboard. And it was very easy to envision. I was just like, if there's a lot of good lands and this card is very easy to play, this seems like it should always be the default end game. Like, it's just such a powerful, powerful tool to play in mid-range mirrors, and you generate so much advantage from it. And it was just 5 when it started. And
you kill a thing outright, you recoil a thing, and then you get a 6/6 that also does stuff. And then there's you get random recursion aspects. So like, there are a lot of knobs, right? But 5 mana, especially if you're playing a 5-color deck, it's not that uncommon for you to have like ramped into this thing, right? So it's just
look what Omnath did at 4 colors. Like, the 4 colors didn't matter. It was just completely irrelevant. So I'm like, is this card Omnath if it costs 5? And that's a very, very high bar, but I think the card is just extremely innately powerful, and it's slow. But if that's what the format is about, and it's not a super aggressive format, and you do have time to get to this end game, this card is quite scary. And I'm happy to see, because like, I think when you move a card like that, you're not trying to obliterate. Like, you want the card to still matter, right? Like, you want it to still be interesting, to still entice people. You just don't want it to be the only way you can possibly play end games. And this deck existing tells me like it's actually right in that spot. It's exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it is weird where, I don't know, it's Wooburg, right? And then you add the generic mana to it, and it's like, all right, I guess it's like one of each kind of, but it just looks so much cleaner without the one. You know what I mean?
It does. It's always a constant trade-off between making like the most pristine, clean, beautiful card and making the card that people don't hate and you don't have to face every single time you play Standard. So
and this card at 6 has still seen some amount of play, like it is doing right now. Is it ever going to be the best thing to be doing in the format? I don't know, but like, also, is that a place where you want to be? I think that this at 6 makes it so you have to think like really hard about whether or not you want to do it. But now,
which I love, like that's the most exciting card to me. Is the one that like you have to fight for it. It's not just there. It's not just clearly the best thing. So really pleased with where this card landed for sure.
Yeah, and you have all the triomes. So your mana is a little clunky, but it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. And now you have Leyline Binding, which gives you a little bit of an extra incentive to do this thing. And then I don't know. Spirit Sisters Call is powerful, but I don't know if that's the best way to go about doing this thing. But regardless, it's really cool. And it is cool that the enchantments also make 1/1s that you could use to like either sack to get Titan of Industry or get the
Yeah.
Kami War. So this
I'm
deck is
I'm
just
so glad you found this deck. This is really cool.
yeah, it's just a brilliant deck, man. And 5 I don't know. I mean, does that mean anything? Is there still a lot of win trading going on? I don't know, but
This deck looks powerful to me. I
it
mean, certainly consistency issues, and it is slow. It takes a while to get going, but if the format is slow, once this gets going, again, we keep coming back to like those huge end games. This is about as big as you can get, I think. So
yeah, it looks good to me. So I've been playing standard. I've been enjoying it. I'm filthy spikes, so like playing with a lot of the black decks and black cards and trying to figure out like the best version of that stuff and trying to figure out how to beat mirrors. But I'm also interested in trying to figure out how to beat those decks with things like a mid-range mono white deck or whatever, whether that's like with a splash or 2 splashes or whatever. So I'm doing my thing. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know if that's interesting to folks or not, but
I find this standard format super interesting. I mean, I think it's why we keep coming back to it, where I don't know if anyone actually like cares that much. I am sure that the majority of focus is in other places, but in terms of like interesting developments and a metagame churning a little bit and weird stuff coming from out of nowhere, like, not to harp on this point again, but it makes me feel the way Magic used to feel, where this stuff was just a constant thing that was going on and it was worth keeping track of on a week-to-week basis. I think it is working in standard right now, and there's things that could be better about it, but on the whole, the format's successful. I think it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, RCQs will start back up soon. I'm sure the majority of them will be Modern Pioneer again. There will be the RC in Atlanta. I'm not sure globally what the schedule is for the rest of the RCs, but we should probably pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But regardless, I feel like we'll be talking about Modern and Pioneer a little bit more going forward.
For sure. Kind of giving some time to those formats, let them pick up new pieces, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't, and then should be ready for us to check in on pretty soon.
Game.
Good luck.